Hello, I'm Mark Crutcher. Welcome to LifeTalk it's December 11th, 2018, and we welcome you to the show. Sheila's going to be missing today. She's missing in action, but she'll be back here this afternoon. And I'm joined by the other usual suspect, my assistant, Renee Hobbs. Hello, Renee.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good to be here.
It's nice to have you here. If it wasn't for you, I'd be here by myself.
You'd be doing this alone, wouldn't you?
Right. Anyway, Sheila will be back for the next show. We've got several things that are going on today, and this is going to be a somewhat abbreviated show, not a very short one, but a somewhat abbreviated show. But we do have a couple of things that are trending. Renee, one of the things that I have imparted to you over the years that you've been here is something I learned when I was in the auto industry, and especially about the way General Motors was built. And it was built by a guy named Billy Durant. He's one of the most fascinating characters you'll ever read about. I've told you a little bit about him. Amazing guy. But he built General Motors, and he built it on the concept not of talent or skill or any of those things. Billy Durant's primary concern always was, and he said, you build organizations and you build companies on loyalty. And when I first heard that from the people when I was in the auto industry, that Durant saw that as the most important concept.
It's very important.
I didn't appreciate it for years, but then later on I saw how important that concept. It overrides everything.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
if you've got loyalty, then all the other traits that you need to succeed,
Right.
You'll have.
Right.
If you have loyalty.
Yeah, because you know that person's going to back you even if they disagree
Right.
with what you're saying.
Right, exactly. And this is something that a lot of so-called pro-lifers, people that are phony pro-lifers in my view, that's a concept they don't grasp. They simply don't grasp it. The pro-life movement went to bat for Brett Kavanaugh.
Very much so.
Very much so.
And the pro-abortion side fought,
hated him.
hated him terribly bad because they thought he was going to overturn Roe versus Wade.
And now, and of course, we had, and I wrote something about this at the time, we had no evidence, none whatsoever, that Kavanaugh was a pro-lifer. There was nothing out there. They just thought he might be.
Right.
Now we know he's not. He joined with all the lefties, all the godless lefties on the Supreme Court, the liberals, to deny a case coming up to challenge Planned Parenthood's receiving of federal dollars.
Yes, from Louisiana and Kansas.
Right. Mm-hmm. And people can say what they want, but there's no way on God's green earth that somebody who is pro-life and loyalty and can be counted on would have made that ruling.
Right, and this is his very first ruling, and there's argument out there saying that he ruled this way because they think that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's going to be retiring soon, and they want to keep, they want him to look good, and I'm not exactly sure how the argument's going, but it has to do with Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
So whoever replaces her,
right,
they won't do the same.
Right.
That's the most idiotic argument you can make.
Right.
Because whoever gets appointed to replace her, they're going to fight, the godless left is going to fight her or him tooth and nail.
Oh, well, just like they did Kavanaugh.
Just like they did Kavanaugh, just like they did Clarence Thomas, just go back, just like they did Robert Bork.
Right. And we have to remember at the very beginning of this, when Trump had nominated for Kavanaugh, that he stated that he looked up to Roberts.
Right.
And here it is. I mean, liberal, he sided with him, and
Roberts has shown to be totally disloyal.
right.
He's one of the godless leftists now on the Supreme Court.
Right.
But the thing that we have to understand about this, and about another story we're going to talk about here in a minute, is something that we've said here many times. When we get a new person elected to office that claims to be pro-life, or a new person put on the Supreme Court who claims to be pro-life, and especially the ones that are nominated by Republicans like Souter and Roberts and now Kavanaugh,
Yes.
who turn out to be turncoats and are not pro-life, we always get this attitude, or you see this attitude within the pro-life movement, and I know you and I have talked about this a bunch, that people are going to look at that and say, oh, now we can sit back and rest. These guys are going to do our work for us. That's nonsense.
Right.
And I want to say one other thing here, reiterate something that we've talked about before. The abortion issue is either going to be won in the streets by the pro-lifers,
Yes.
or it's not going to be won.
Right. Yeah. No, we cannot look up to the Supreme Court justices and know that they're going to do our job.
They're not.
It is our job to do, and we have to fight
Right.
continuously for these babies. They are being butchered by the millions, and the mothers are either being killed or their lives are not the
Screwed up.
same after having
Right.
an abortion.
And if we think that any politician, any Republican Party, any member of the Supreme Court is going to be a crusader for the unborn, we are fooling ourselves.
That's right.
We are dreaming.
Right.
A good example of this is a guy named Larry Obhof, Obhof. He's the president of the Senate in Ohio. And we had our friend Janet Porter on a couple of shows back
Yes.
talking about the heartbeat bill. Now, to give a little history there, the heartbeat bill was passed in Ohio one time before and then was vetoed
Right.
by the Kasich,
Right.
the governor, who always claimed to be pro-life and talked about his pro-life credentials. He was a liar.
Well, that's the same with Larry Obhof.
And now, so yeah, and what Janet was doing, she was leading this effort to get enough votes in the Senate in Ohio so that even if Kasich vetoed it again, which he said he will,
Right.
that they had enough to override. So they got the votes to override.
Yes.
Larry Obhof, who ran against Janet for the Ohio Senate, and she called him out as being a phony pro-lifer, and he called her a liar. He called her all kinds of names.
And other people in the state did too, as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we have absolute, irrefutable proof that she was right.
Yes.
He's a phony pro-lifer. He's a fraud.
Yep.
And the question is that I have, and again, this is the loyalty issue, and what is the level of your commitment? He has none, obviously. Again, this is an example. Are we going to sit back and say, "Oh, we've got all these guys that are pro-life"? Half these guys couldn't give you a definition of pro-life.
Right.
They don't know what it means.
Right.
And I want to say something here. I've been contemplating this for a while, and we've talked about it internally here. The pro-life movement, before we can advance beyond where we are now, because I think we've maxed out what we're going to get from the political arena and from the Supreme Court. We may not have, but it seems like we have. They're not going to go one step further than what they have. I think that we need to do some internal housekeeping in the pro-life movement. We've got people in this movement who are not pro-life. We've got people in this movement who don't know what it means to be pro-life. We've got people in this movement who can't give you a definition of what it means to be pro-life.
It's true.
We've got people in this movement who are complete frauds and phonies.
That's right.
And until we purge the movement of these frauds, I don't know that we can move a whole lot further. We've got to do that. And we're going to be talking about this, and we're going to be laying out some strategies for, I think, for the ways that we can do this.
Right.
And we're going to have to get the leadership of this movement to understand we've got to go back to our roots. We have drifted away from the roots of the pro-life movement. Yes. And I was here in those earlier days, and I can tell you that the pro-life movement that exists today doesn't resemble the one that started this thing. And we've got to recapture that.
Right.
If we don't, we're fooling ourselves.
Right.
We're totally fooling ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be doing some shows on this in the future. And I want people to remember these situations. Now, in this situation in Ohio, it's not a done deal yet. The thing is not completely dead yet. And I talked to Janet this morning. When I called her on her cell phone, she answered whispering, and she was in a Senate hearing, so she couldn't talk to me.
Sure.
So we don't know yet what's going to happen.
Right.
Probably by the end of the day we might. But
Yeah, no, we do need to relight that fire, and we need to find to explain the true meaning behind what it is to be pro-life.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of infighting and
you know what, Renee? We may, if we do some of the things that we're thinking about doing, and the leadership of the pro-life movement starts exposing some of these people, we may have more infighting. But if that's what it takes to get rid of the frauds out of the movement,
right,
then that's what it's going to take.
right,
And let's remember something when we think about this issue of unity. People say, "Well, you're going to create all this disunity in the pro-life movement and all this stuff." Jesus was confronted with that issue, right? What did he say? I did not come to bring unity.
right,
I came to separate a man from his father. I came to bring a sword, right?
right,
He understood that it's kind of like what I've always said about the guys at the Alamo. There were only 185 guys going up against thousands of Mexicans that were surrounding the Alamo. And they could have left. Santa Anna offered to let them leave, but they stayed and fought because they were trying to hold up Santa Anna while Sam Houston was gathering his army together to defeat Santa Anna. And he had 185 guys there. If you could have gone to, and they all were offered the option to leave, they said, we'll stay, knowing exactly what was going to happen. It was not a possibility that they would die at the Alamo. It was a guarantee that they were going to die. And they stayed, and they fought, and they held up Santa Anna for 13 days. And that was crucial in Texas being able to break away from Mexico. That was a crucial, without that, Texas would not have beaten Santa Anna. If you had gone to William Barrett Travis, who was commanding the troops at the Alamo, and said, look, I'll give you another 500 guys, but these guys we don't know if you can really count on. The 185 right now, they've all said, we're signing up, we're staying. Yeah, we're going to get butchered. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. And Santa Anna had already told them, every one of you will be put to the sword. You're gone. He called it throat cut, a song that he played there. Anyway, if you'd have told Travis, I'll give you another 500, I'll give you another 1,000, I'll give you another 1,500 men here at the Alamo, but you don't really know if you can, these are not guys I can promise you that you can count on. The 185 you got, you can count on. These guys I don't know about. Mm-hmm. But you're going to have to hold up Santa Anna for as long as you can, almost 2 weeks here, so Houston has a chance to get his people together. I'll bet you that Travis would have said, look, you keep those 500, 1,500, 2,000, whatever guys did. You keep them. I want people I know are loyal and I know I can count on. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have the 185 men I got than that 2,000 over there that I don't know I can count on.
Right.
I'd rather have that. That's what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I'd rather this movement be half the size that it is right now, but people that are on fire.
Right. Far more effective and,
right.
and getting a whole lot more work done.
Exactly.
Than the frauds in the movement.
Right.
Sure.
And again,
honestly, it's not about us. It's about the millions of babies that have already been killed.
And the millions
we
to come.
want it to end now.
Right. Yeah. And, as we're sitting right here, it's 10:30 or 10:45 in the morning, and there are thousands of babies that are alive as we speak that are going to be ground up in garbage disposals today and thrown in dumpsters and chopped up and sold for parts. And that's what the focus has to be on.
That's right.
And we've lost sight of that in this movement.
Yes, absolutely.
We've totally lost sight of that. And if we don't get back to that, we're just fooling ourselves here. It's just a big joke if we don't get back to that. So we're going to be talking about that issue and trying to help redirect the pro-life movement back in that direction as much as we can. And I'm going to try to get other pro-life leaders to join in with us. I don't know that we will. I don't know that we'll get them, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't hurt to try at least.
We can try, but
right.
but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And I want to point something out too, going back to the Alamo. And of course, like a good Texan, we go back to these stories about the Alamo. The 185 guys that died at the Alamo are heroes. They're remembered. Mm-hmm. You can go on the internet and read about every one of them, who they were, what they did, who their ancestors are. Right. The people that followed them in their families are heroes today in Texas. If you go around Texas and you say, my great-grandfather died at the Alamo, you're exalted here because those guys and let's make sure people understand something. The Alamo was a defeat. We lost at the Alamo.
Yes, we did.
Right?
Right.
But ultimately, it took that defeat in order for us to win.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And Travis told those guys. He said, if anybody wants to leave, Santa Ana said you can walk out the gate. You can take your horses, your guns, your money, whatever. You can leave, and he won't bother you. And they stayed. And he said, but if you stay with me, I think each one of you will take 10 in return. You will sell our lives dearly. You'll take 10 guys with you. And that's almost exactly what they did.
Right.
And without having bled Santa Ana's army and held them up for 13 days, Sam Houston would not have won at San Jacinto. And that's what we have to understand. It's not about numbers. It's not about which movement has more numbers. It's not about polling, which movement gets the most support from the public. It's which movement has the most commitment and has the most loyalty. And when I say loyalty, I don't mean loyalty to me or to you or to the pro-life movement. I mean loyalty to those babies.
That's right.
That's where our loyalties lie.
Yes.
And loyalty to God in doing what he called us to do.
Right.
And we're seeing here, and these are two good examples that have happened in just the last 24 hours or so that exemplify that. We cannot depend on these people. We cannot depend on them.
That's right.
And
Exactly right.
and again, using the Alamo analogy, Travis was getting all kind of messages from outside saying all these things that generals were promising. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to be there. We're going to, none of them showed up. And Travis told his men, he said, we're getting all these letters. He said, these things aren't worth the paper they're written on.
Right.
And he said, I'm telling you right now, nobody's coming.
Right. Well, Terry says that you have us, and then Linda, she says that she's on fire and she's ready for her next assignment.
Okay, good. All right. Well, anyway, when we come back from RoeBots, we're going to be talking about the effect that abortion has had on our country. And this is a particular issue we've talked about before. But anyway, we'll be taking a break for RoeBots, and we'll be right back.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. The decision is called Roe versus Wade, and those who defend it are known as RoeBots. This is how they think.
Even if we could prove that abortion is immoral, that doesn't mean it should be illegal. Everyone knows that morality cannot be legislated.
This idiotic statement has always been the last refuge of people who want society to permit something that cannot be morally defended. The fact is, the claim that we don't legislate morality is nonsense. We do so every day, and we always have. Every law ever passed was someone's idea of right and wrong, and we impose those laws even on people who might have a totally different belief system. For example, every decent person is morally opposed to rape, and they have no problem with society imposing that morality on people who might believe that rape is morally acceptable. In effect, society says to the rapist, we don't care what you think about women. We don't care why you commit rapes. And we don't care about your personal, moral, or religious views on rape. As a civilized people, we have decided that rape is morally unacceptable, and we are going to use our laws to impose that belief on you, regardless of what you think. And that philosophy does not just apply to laws against rape. It applies to every law that has ever been passed. When we outlawed whites-only water fountains, we did not do so because black people were being denied water. We did so because this kind of racial discrimination is morally indefensible. We have also enacted laws against pedophilia, and we enforce them against people who sincerely think it should be legal for adults to have sex with 5-year-olds. And yes, there are people who make that argument. The point is, the law is nothing more or less than a society's collective moral values. And without that moral compass, our culture would collapse into a state of bedlam and anarchy in which the only governing principle is the law of the jungle. So while it is true that the law cannot make an immoral person moral, it can regulate that immoral person's behavior and keep them from inflicting it on others. In the end, the most important question is, if the decisions about what behavior society will and will not allow are not going to be based on morality, what are they going to be based on? All right, we're back. we have often talked about the devastating effect that abortion has had on our country.
Yes.
And one of those has been that it has devastated the maternal instinct in a lot of women.
Oh my goodness, it sure has.
And it's sad to
Yes.
see that this has happened. We saw an article the other day from NBC. A woman who has a child with Down syndrome, and she's a pro-abort, raging pro-abort, apparently.
Yes.
And she writes this article critical of the pro-life movement because we're out here saying that babies who are diagnosed with Down syndrome should not be murdered in the womb just because they have Down syndrome, which is in most estimates right now 97%. In some countries now, Iceland, for example, is bragging about the fact
100%.
that they have totally eliminated Down syndrome. They don't have any more Down syndrome in their country because they've killed them all.
Yes.
They kill all the babies that have Down syndrome. 100% of them get murdered.
Yes.
This woman is a pro-abort, and she's in Ohio, and she has been opposed to the heartbeat bill that we talked about earlier, of course. And she even filed an amicus brief as a mother of a Down syndrome baby, opposed to this bill in the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And she said she did it on behalf of mothers and children with Down syndrome. But let me read something she wrote in this article that's interesting. And she's talking about the inequities people face with disabilities in the past. But she says things are getting better for Down syndrome people. People born with the condition now live with their families as opposed to being institutionalized at birth as they once were and often still are. Many attend public schools, including college, and adults often live independently, have jobs, drive cars, fall in love, and get married. So she's agreeing that if these babies survive the womb, life is much better for them than it was many years ago.
Yes.
And we know that's true.
Yes.
But it's still okay to butcher them in the womb.
Yeah, that's what she thinks.
And that's precisely what she said.
Yeah, and there's a show on now on, I don't know, TBN or something that are 4 different stories of Down syndrome adults and how they do fall in love and how they are working and things that they're doing. And in this article, she also says that if you don't have money, you can't get the resources such as physical therapy, occupational, or speech therapy that a child needs to have a better speech, successful mobility, speech, and cognitive
abilities.
Abilities,
Yeah, right.
Thank you. And I reached out to a Facebook friend that I have that has a child with Down syndrome, a beautiful, beautiful little girl. And she wasn't able to be on the show with us, but I did ask her a question about this. Like, I don't know exactly what there is, what other states offer. And I'd just like to read something real quick. She said that what this person is saying is totally
She's
false.
lying.
Totally, completely false. And she said, in the state of Florida, there is an early intervention program where the child receives all therapies necessary up to the age of 3. At the age of 3, the child goes into an early intervention classroom and is in a public school. There are also grants available to pay for therapy, schooling, and anything additional necessary for the child's advancement. So in Florida, the statement is completely false.
She's a liar.
She is.
And
She has been bought
now, of course,
a lie.
this woman is in Ohio. I don't believe that Ohio probably has less options for Down syndrome children than Florida does, but let's just say that it does. Let's say that the state of Ohio has nothing. Then if you're a Down syndrome parent, you ought to be out working for that, not supporting the right to kill them.
That's right.
But this is a good example. And I know if this woman were here, she'd be arguing with me about this. This woman has very, very damaged maternal instincts.
Yes, she does.
Any In history, any woman who had this situation would have been reacting totally differently.
That's right.
She would not have been out here saying, "Oh, we don't have resources, so therefore let's kill them."
Well, this goes back to loyalty. She does not have loyalty to her child.
Her own child.
Her own child. A mother that has a child like that is going to fight and fight to get more resources for this child. And she is obviously not doing it. She's fighting against it.
Yep.
Because she's saying that this child is imperfect. It does not live or deserve to live, which is wrong.
Right.
Wrong in itself. But she's been fed a lie, and she doesn't deserve to keep her baby as far as I'm concerned. That child needs to be taken away from her and put in a loving home where somebody
will care about her.
That's right.
You know, it's disgraceful, but this is what you get.
Right.
When you legalize the wholesale slaughter of the unborn, basically for any reason whatsoever, for no reason whatsoever, at any stage of the pregnancy, whatever, and you've got people like this woman, Holly Christensen, out here defending that.
Yes.
Even when the abortion being done to take a life of a child with Down syndrome, and you have a Down syndrome child that you claim you love,
Right.
This woman is very damaged goods.
Yes.
I'm telling you, and
she is.
she has very, very questionable maternal instincts. I don't care what anybody says. I'm sure there'll be even pro-life people out there that'll hear you and I say these things that'll be mad at us.
Well,
that's okay. You say you throw the truth out there, and whatever happens, happens.
Right.
But that's the reality.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, that's pretty much all we have for this week.
Yep.
And next week, Sheila should be back with us, or she will be back with us unless something happens between now and then. But anyway, you have anything else?
I don't know. I don't have anything.
Comments that we need to read?
Yeah, no. If you do have questions or show ideas, send them to us, please, either email or private message, however you want to get with us. And if we use it, we will send you this mug. Keeps your coffee warm, and it's nice and deep. So anyways, if we use your show idea, we'll send you the mug. And thank you for sending those show ideas to us. We appreciate it.
We do appreciate it, and we do use them, and we will send you a mug. And speaking of mugs, we dodged a bullet last week because Sheila had coffee in her mug.
Oh, I know it.
And it was sitting there, and you didn't know it.
I had no clue, and I went to go grab it, and she grabbed it real quick, and I was thinking, well, that's fine. She can show the
I just
mug.
saw you take it up and shake it around and show it to people. If you had done that last week,
it would have been spilled all over the table.
coffee would have gone everywhere.
That would have been embarrassing.
Anyway, that's okay. If that would have been the worst that happened to us, we'd have survived.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks. You did a great job today, as usual, Rennie, even without your comical sidekick over there.
Nice shirt.
Huh?
Nice shirt. Mark says nice shirt.
Oh, okay. That was not me that said
And
that.
God bless you, Terry. Thank you.
Yes. Listen, that's all the time we have. Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing will stop. We'll see you next Tuesday.